So I'm going to answer some questions about The Fault in Our Stars. If I go over my time, then Hank gets to slap me, but I'm not going to go over my time. So, I got to start the clock here, make sure I don't go over my time. I get very nervous about getting, I don't like to get hit. All right. This first question is from Tilly. By the way, thank you for all your questions. I apologize in advance for all the ones that I'm not answering. What was the original working title for The Fault in Our Stars? Well, there were a lot of titles. Like, the Word document was called Sequel. But by the time, like, I save each draft differently, so I think like the one that was published was like Sequel 269 or something, I don't know. But we very nearly called it The Sequel, because the idea of trying to find the sequel to An Imperial Affliction. But then we didn't, because that would have been commercial suicide. Everyone would have been like, the sequel to what? I don't get it. I think you're so clever. I might call my next book The Sequel, though I really like that title. We also, for a long time, we were very close to calling it The Hectic Glow, which is the name. See, there's a lot of support for that title. Maybe I'll call my next book The Hectic Glow instead. The problem with The Hectic Glow is that it is extremely difficult to say. And so if you want to recommend a book to your friends, which I hope that you will, you don't want to be like, I read this book, it's called like The Metric Snow, or it's called something. It was good. You should read it. Doesn't work. Also, but that title comes from a great line in Thoreau's diaries where he says, decay and disease are often beautiful like the pearly tear of the shellfish or the hectic glow of consumption. And that idea of the hectic glow of consumption was something that you read about a lot, like Dostoevsky. Well, in the English translations of Dostoevsky, it was used in like medical textbooks as a sign of tuberculosis, this sort of rosy-cheeked glow that was sort of seen as beautiful. And tuberculosis really was, to the 19th century, what cancer is in a lot of ways, at least to our contemporary world, because it was a capricious disease that struck young people and old, and sometimes you lived and sometimes you didn't, and it was very mysterious, and all of the treatments for it or many of the treatments for it were pretty horrible and sort of barbaric. And so and in the first drafts of the novel there were tons of connections to tuberculosis and cancer, but in fact that stuff is very boring, so I don't know why I'm talking about it. What was the hardest part of The Fault in Our Stars to write? All of the parts. That's from Fiona, by the way. Yeah, I mean, the end took many tries. So I'll go with the last, like, 10 pages. And then when I finally wrote the last 10 pages, which is a question, the next question, how did you feel when you finished writing TFIOS? That's not from anybody in particular, but it's someone who had a blue sparkly pen. How did I feel when I finished writing TFIOS? I remember I was in a coffee shop when I finally wrote the last, like, 5 pages, no spoilers, don't worry. And I mean, I essentially collapsed into a puddle of sobs. I was in this Starbucks that I wrote the whole book in, and I'm sure they thought I was a very strange person, because as far as they knew, I just showed up every morning around 7:30 or 8 o'clock. I opened my computer, I cried for 4 hours, I closed my computer and left, thanking them on my way out. Thanks for another great day. It was very sad. I mean, I wrote, to be honest, like, a lot of the book was written in grief and in anger and in a time of great sadness in my life and fear too. So there was a lot going on. I'd just become a father, and so I couldn't help but think differently about the kids in the book, because I suddenly understood the relationship between parents and kids in a way that I hadn't understood it before. So yeah, that part was hard. Why did you choose Amsterdam to be the city they visit in The Fault in Our Stars? A lot of people think I chose Amsterdam because I had a writing residency there, and I got to live there for 2 months. And so I was like, screw it. But no, I had written all the Amsterdam parts before I went to Amsterdam. I'd written them years before. I chose Amsterdam. I mean, I love Amsterdam as a city. I think it's a really fascinating city. It's a very vibrant city. It's very alive in a way that, frankly, like a place like Venice isn't. But it's also drowning. I mean, thanks to like Dutch engineers, it will probably be the last city left in the world. When the seas rise, Amsterdam will still be there. But we'll all be gone. But the Dutch will be fine. You know, it's a very vibrant city, but it's also a city that by all rights should not exist because of drowning. And that's very much the relationship that Hazel also has with water. There's this liquid that's filling up her lungs that has to be drained out of a chest tube. So water is both what makes her life possible and what in the end will make her life short. And so I wanted to find a different way to reflect that, and Amsterdam seemed like a good city to kind of talk about that. And I think at one point, Hazel even says, like, I guess I was Dr. Maria's Amsterdam. Like, she makes that connection herself. Have you ever cried over The Fault in Our Stars? I think I might have already answered that. I mean, you know, I didn't think it was that sad of a book. I wanted it to be really funny. I did. Not a joke. I did. I really wanted it to be funny. And I kept giving pages to Sarah, who my wife reads my books first, and I would give her pages, and I'd be like, I mean, I waited so long for this voice and this story to work, you know, that like I was incredibly excited, like a schoolgirl, every time I would come home. Every day I would come home and give Sarah pages, and I'd be like, read it, read it, read it, read it, read it, read it, read it. Do you mind if I watch? Do you mind if I... Isn't it good? And she would read it and she'd be like, it's very sad. And I'd be like, not really though, right? I mean, it's pretty funny. It's really sad. I think it's quite funny. And I still do. I think I must have an exceptionally high tolerance for fun, or a low tolerance for funny, maybe. Yeah, I mean, I wanted it to reflect what I'd seen and experienced, which was, you know, people who I could love partly because they were so funny and alive. Yeah, and I tried really hard to do that, but then I guess it ended up just being very sad. And no one's ever like, John, your book's so funny. Everyone's always like, oh, my feels. I don't even know what that means. I'm too old to know if that's good or bad. This will be the last question, I guess, so I don't get hit. How did you come up with all the names, like Gus and Hazel? Did they have special meanings? Well, yeah, I mean, I don't... when you write a book over the course of 10 years, you have a lot of time to screw around and think of stuff, you know? So, I'm just going to watch myself count down the time here. With Gus, Augustus is the name of Roman emperors. Like all the Roman emperors were called Augustus somewhere in one of their like 37 names. But the first Roman emperor was just Emperor Augustus. And so it really is an imperial name. But then Gus is a name of like a little kid. Like it's a short monosyllabic name. It makes you picture someone quite small. And that journey from Augustus to Gus is really the journey that he must go on. Like, you know, when Hazel first meets Augustus, he's super charming and charismatic, almost in a performative way, right? Like, Gus is constantly like slightly misusing words because he knows a lot of big words and he wants to make sure that you know that he knows them, but he doesn't quite always know what they mean. So at one point, like I think he actually says to Hazel, like, stop talking, I'm in the middle of a memorized soliloquy. He meant monologue, but he says soliloquy. And because like he's so performed that like he obviously sat at home and memorized what he wanted to say to this girl, which is kind of charming, but kind of not. You know, I've always grown up being taught and seeing in the stories that dominated my cultural life growing up, that the hero's journey is the journey from weakness to strength. But the journey that Gus must go on is the journey from strength to weakness. And I think that is the real hero's journey. That to me is why Gus is a heroic character, is because not always happily and not always willingly, he is able to make that journey from strength to weakness and to still be available to love and be loved. Hazel's name is just an in-between color. Hazel, like it's between two colors, and Hazel is in between many states. She's in between health and wellness. She's in between, you know, teenage earnest and adult adulthood. And in between many other states as well. So that's why her name, and I'm going to run out of time, so I will now stop. I think now I will bring on, however, I think I will bring on, I think we should have more Question Tuesday before Hank plays another set. So I think I will bring on Hank. Hank, are you here?